Thank you. Feel like I have to take a deep breath before starting. Maybe you want to join me. All right. So, sorry. Right. Hi, I'm Coco, and I was a UI and UX designer at Mimimi Games when we developed Shadow Gambit, The Cursed Crew, and I will talk about what we did to improve immersion in the game and why we thought that we had to improve it in the first place. So in Shadow Gambit, you play a crew of cursed pirates on enemy territory, and since you're always severely outnumbered, you have to stay hidden and plan your attacks really well. But enemies are everywhere, and in order to keep an overview, the game is played in an isometric perspective, meaning with this top-down camera. Here you can see two players on the beach, two characters with hiding spots and the enemy. So you get a good overview over the situation, but there's something you actually don't see very well. Your characters, right? Because of the camera perspective, they are really small and you can hardly make out any details. Like, look at this little pirate there. So instead of being immersed, you feel rather distant and you're hovering above them. And this is not the experience we wanted the players to have. We want a strong attachment to the characters and, of course, the players to feel that they care and enjoy spending time with the characters. So our goal was to bring them to eye level with the player to achieve deeper immersion. But before I go into detail, let me briefly explain that this genre was originally developed for PC with mouse and keyboard input. So when Mimimi Games developed the first title also for console, the input already changed the way that the player-character relationship feels. So here you can see and get a feeling for what it is like to play with PC. You're using mouse to click somewhere, and the character walks to that location. So the input is, the movement is rather abstract. You feel like a general ordering your troops around, and you watch the action happen. Or sometimes you might not even watch, but you just do something else in the meantime. So you're kind of disconnected from the movement and what's actually happening in the game. So when we take a look at the more modern console version, however, you move the character around with your thumbsticks, so you're basically walking yourself. You can feel that a character is slower when they are carrying something or because they are trying to stay undetected. So you're way more immersed in this action. So there's a huge difference in the way it feels to play on PC versus playing on console. And in terms of immersion, the console already has this advantage through the input. So building on that foundation, what did we do in Shadow Gambit to overcome the distance of the isometric camera and to create more immersion? On the PC, there is this big character portrait in the corner of the HUD. It takes quite a lot of space and it doesn't have any real functionality, to be honest. But we decided to keep it anyway because it makes the character more present and you can look them in the eyes, actually. Another thing, another small detail are these icons that are visible next to the cursor when you are knocking enemies out. The knockout action is identical for each character, but we decided to personalize those icons to show how unique all the pirates are. And because usually you don't see their bodies so well. When we added dialogue cutscenes, unfortunately we didn't have the budget to animate them fully, but we also didn't want to remove them completely from the game world. So we went for a hybrid solution and used those beautiful 2D portraits on top of the in-world scenes. And some other cutscenes that were recurring, here, like you see at the beginning of each mission, they change dynamically depending on which character you have selected, which is quite cool. And you can see how the camera perspective has already changed from being isometric. It is finally down at eye level. So one other big novelty, and also the last talking point for me today, is the character selection. It's a really important screen that players see before every mission and where they spend a lot of time. So it had great potential to make the game feel more immersive, but it was also a real challenge to get it right. As you can see here, the first question was how to place the characters. Since they would be unlocked one by one and in a random order, Especially at the beginning of the game, with only 1 or 2 characters present, we wanted it to look cool, of course, not like this. We tried placing them in like a semicircle or a line or on the ship in different rows, but it didn't work. But luckily, our concept artist had the idea of a planning table. This way, the characters didn't feel so lost anymore in the beginning and had a reason for actually being there. For maximum immersion, we wanted the scene to look as realistic as possible, so we went full in, despite creating new obstacles on the way. Because of course, there were a lot of UI elements, since players had to take an informed decision. They needed to know about abilities, playstyle, and several other things, and the screen became quite cluttered. In the end, we managed to hide some information on different layers, so not everything had to be visible all times. But of course, also the different hover, selection, deselection states had to be super clear. So we had to pull out all the stops with special animation, lots of VFX, voice lines, audio, and so on. It would definitely have been easier to fit all these elements on a more abstract screen, but we wanted it to be as realistic as possible, and I think it paid off, because finally we had this moment where the player could really feel like sitting among the crew and being a part of them. It played a huge role in making the characters likable and feeling close to them. And finally, we had overcome that distance, that at least in some parts of the game. So to recap, we had this isometric camera that created a distance between player and characters. We used different methods to bring them closer together and literally moved the camera down to eye level in some scenes. One element that was a lot of work but also very effective for immersion was this character selection screen. Thank you for coming to my talk.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's fantastic. They all survived and they did a great job. So maybe we can give another round of applause for all the Picha Kucha sessions. I have a couple of questions, and you can add another question if you want. So Laura and Sven, you can, it's a yes/no question. So you can tell me, is your applied research program possible to do in English? Where are you guys? Oh, you're here. Oh, okay, seems more complicated than I thought. So the answer is there's no real research program. So yeah, they don't have PhD students. So if they have funding, then they can make something happen. So wink, wink. Okay, and there's a question for one, so if you can come down here. Great subject. In your research, did you examine mobile games or gamified apps for self-development? What conclusions or observations did you find?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think, yeah, sure, yeah, okay. The question was focus on mobile games, right, or gamified apps. I think we mostly, or this research I've been talking about is mostly part of my dissertation, and I mostly focused on entertainment games, the AAA games I showed in the slides. So let's focus on serious games and so on. But I think there's a lot of research out there that is focused on how serious games, how learning in those games can lead to also learning about yourself, about self-development. So yeah, not in my research, but I think there's a lot of things out there. Yeah, if that answers the question.
And we have two questions for Coco. What user research did you do to measurably see the impact of the changes you made? Surveys, for example?
Not a lot. Unfortunately, the company closed just after the release of the game, so we couldn't really follow up on all these things that we had wanted to follow up on. Yeah, I did write my master thesis before starting the development of Shadow Gambit on one earlier title, which was like in the same genre. And I did a survey, questionnaire, and a lot of stuff, but yeah, I was not really happy with the outcome, so that would be something that maybe you can give me some input on actually later on.
And one last question for you. Will Shadow Gambit be available on Switch?
I think I already answered that.
Yeah, the game industry sucks at times. Thank you again for all the Picha Kucha sessions. I really loved it, so I hope you did too.